Hey guys, how are we doing? I am back with another insightful sessions, and I am joined by the legendary Credible Crypto this morning. He's someone I've wanted to get on the podcast for ages. I really look up to Cred. As I told him before we got on this podcast, it's like I've been looking at his TA for a long time, and he really inspired me to go deeper down the technical analysis rabbit hole. So without further ado, I'm actually going to let Cred introduce himself. I want to ask Cred, what was your journey like getting into crypto? When did you first get in, and like how did you get into technical analysis, and how did you become such a goat in the space at TA?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. Appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, guys, this is credible, obviously, and got in the space, involved in the space in 2017, back when Bitcoin was at like 3 to 4 thousand. I had heard about Bitcoin years before that, all throughout college, pretty much, and I had buddies who were mining it when it was under $1,000. But like many of us, ignored it for the longest time and didn't actually look into it until 2017 on its way to it was at new all-time highs at the time at 3 or 4 thousand, and that's when I first got involved. And then I bought my first Bitcoin about a week later, between 3 to 4K, and then that is kind of when the big run up to 20K began. Sold all my Bitcoin at 11K right before we ran up to 20K, and making that mistake of kind of selling myself short on that rally is what kind of pushed me into gear to start learning about technical analysis and how to better interpret and analyze the charts so that in the future I wouldn't make the same mistake. And I've talked about this in other interviews and stuff, but it was really I was using RSI, which today I still use, but I use it in a very different way. And back then when I was still learning, like, I was very new to the space, so I was using the RSI indicator incorrectly, which is a way that a lot of new people tend to use it because the terminology, the verbiage that people use to describe momentum on RSI, overbought, oversold, it's a bit misleading. And I've made videos on this in the past, but basically I misunderstood how to correctly use the indicator, like I think a lot of new people do, and that led me to kind of selling off right before things really went parabolic in 2017. So sold on my Bitcoin at 11K, and then I ended up buying XRP at 22 cents, rode that up all the way up to the highs at 350, and then sold everything on the way down at 222. So that was my first big win. I put in 5K at the time. That was a lot for me. It became 50K, and that was the beginning of where we're at today. Basically, that's what kind of pushed me to dive deeper and really understand the markets, and got me where I am today. Yep.
Well, that's a few good flips there. Even like for your first flip being 5K to 11K on Bitcoin, like that's better than most people do. Well, I'm going to include myself in that bracket. My first run it was the same one, and I pretty much I made like maybe 100% profit, but I put like $1,000 in, which was a lot to me at the time, and made it into 2,000, but only because I bought lower than you. Literally, I bought like maybe 3K Bitcoin and sold it maybe six, but on the way down. So
Uh,
how did you even know to take profits like on your first cycle? Is it just like an instinct, or were you just like, oh, it's a lot of money for me now, like I just want to get it out of the market? Like what made you sell at 11, for example?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly what happened was I was still learning technical analysis at the time, and I had been dabbling in stocks a little bit. So I had kind of a very elementary understanding of technical analysis. And so at the time, what happened was I was looking at RSI. I can't remember what time frame, but I had convinced myself based on the studying that I'd done at the time that when RSI is overbought, it indicates that it's like a reversal is probably coming, right? So on whatever time frame that was, RSI hit overbought territory, hit 70 plus, and I thought that's probably the extent of this rally. I've made 100% quicker than I ever have before, and I thought, let me lock it in because we're overbought, and that means a reversal is coming. And now, obviously, today we know that when RSI is above 70 and things are overbought, it's actually insanely bullish, and that's when we get the biggest moves. So, had I had that knowledge today, I probably would have held on longer and probably would have been able to catch that move up to 20. But because I was new to it all and I didn't understand the nuance of RSI, that's kind of what had me cash out at 11. And then, of course, Bitcoin went on to 20, and then I started, I was like, okay, well, I doubled up on Bitcoin. What else can I make money on? And that's when I came across XRP. And back then, it was on Bittrex, it was on Binance, and it was on BitMEX, right? And so I remember too, it was wild because I had bought XRP at 22 cents after doing a little bit of research, and I was at dinner with my friends, and XRP was climbing. It hit 30 cents, it hit 40 cents. And I was like, guys, you got to get into this. And bought more at 50 cents and I think 75 cents. And by the time my buddies wanted to buy in, it was at that point where all the exchanges stopped allowing new customers because they were so swamped. And you could literally buy like BitMEX accounts on eBay or Bittrex accounts on eBay, from what I remember, because they weren't allowing new registrations. And so that's pretty wild times to think of. The major exchanges at the time. Bittrex is now gone. BitMEX is not no longer the dominant one. Binance is way up there. Bybit's up there. Like, it's changed a lot over the last 7 years. But yeah, that's how I initially got in. That's what led me to take profits and got me to cash out at that time.
Yeah, like I remember the journey. I think it was like around. It felt like it was around like New Year when it really started to like climax for XRP. Because I remember being at like a New Year's party and people were like some people at the party were talking about it. And at the time, I wasn't holding XRP, and I used to think like about the market cap and this sort of thing that really was like a big negative towards the asset itself. But just going back to RSI, that's something that I think is very important for people who are listening to this podcast, and even have people who are close to me who I talk to about the RSI. It's like something to notice on the RSI is on the larger time frames when we get into the overbought territory. The word overbought is quite misleading because overbought does indicate like a negative connotation, but when we get into those overbought territories on the larger time frames, so the weekly, the monthly, and the 3 monthly. For most charts, like I'm going to include gold in this as well, because the gold on the 3 monthly goes pretty parabolic when it gets into the overbought territory. Like that's when we get the majority of the percentages in these moves. So as Cred like rightly identifies, when we get into those overbought areas, doesn't necessarily mean that you should sell. What it actually means, as Cred very well explains in a lot of his videos, is that we have a lot of momentum behind us. So that's when things can get really crazy. Is that right, Cred?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And yeah, I mean, that's huge. I don't use many indicators in my actual analysis and trading today. The only one that I really still use is RSI. And it's for that reason. It's very helpful if you know the correct way to use it. We can go into more depth, of course, but you, as I'm sure are familiar with, you can look for divergences, and that's when you might be seeing reversal if you see a divergence in overbought territory. But if you're not seeing divergences in overbought territory, then odds are the trend, whatever it is at the time, is likely going to continue significantly. And that's one of the major takeaways. And for that reason, like I said, I don't use moving averages, I don't use MACD, I don't use a lot of these indicators, but I do use RSI. And knowing how to correctly interpret it is absolutely key, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of that, let's get into some charts. If you would have a little presentation of your Bitcoin chart. We haven't actually prepped the Bitcoin chart because Bitcoin's just broken 100K just before we came on this call. So both me and Cred were a bit like, okay, let's play it fly a little bit. So what we're going to do is let Cred talk to us and show us exactly what he's looking at in the markets right now, and he's obviously showing us a few different charts here, but he's zooming in now to Bitcoin is where we're going to start, I think. So
Yeah,
I'll,
so we'll start with Bitcoin. And I actually just finished recording a YouTube video that's going to probably be live tomorrow. So all these markings are from when I was explaining in the YouTube video. But let's see here. Okay, can you see my screen clearly?
yep, yep,
Okay.
got you.
All right, perfect. Okay, so this is the Bitcoin chart, and let me see if I can. Okay, we'll zoom out a little bit. And yeah, Bitcoin just broke 100K for the first time, so that's great to see. And I think kind of the key here is that in terms of structure, we're going to get a lot of answers here in the coming days, and that's also what I said in the most recent video, is that this can go one of two ways. Obviously, up, down, up or down, as the people like to comment. But the important thing is the way in which we move up and the way in which we move down. So obviously, we've broken 100K, and we're coming off this kind of like very like clear consolidation structure. This kind of looks like a pretty like classic triangular. You can call it a bull flag, you can call it a pennant, whatever you want to call it. A pretty classic like consolidation structure here. And without getting things too in depth, obviously I'm using Elliott wave analysis here, but just to make things pretty straightforward, when you get a sort of breakout of a consolidation like this, one of two things happen. One is you get a real breakout, and we essentially, this is the start of a much larger move to the upside, right? So in the very bullish scenario, we should climb higher here. I'm not sure how high, but we should climb higher here for a nice trending move to the upside, right? In the alternate scenario, if we're not going to get that very bullish scenario, then what you have here could really essentially just be a fake out, or we call a deviation, right? So the bullish scenario, we keep climbing maybe to 110, maybe to 115 for now. Not sure how high, but the bearish scenario is that this is probably, or this is actually just a ranging movement, and that this breakout may end up being a fake out. So what that would look like here is this little range that I have here. We can move that up. And then instead of this being like a typical bull flag breakout, what we might end up with in that case is we might end up with a rejection above these highs somewhere here, and then we fizzle back into the range, and then we target the lows. So in the immediate short term, what we're looking for is we're looking to see if this breakout can sustain. And if it's going to sustain, then this little green box that I have here on the lower time frames is really the line in the sand for bulls and bears. If we break back below this green box, then odds are we're going to take all these lows and head back to the range lows at around 85K. If we can hold above here, and really ideally in a perfect world, we really shouldn't even retest this green box, because by the time if this is as bullish as we think it is, then we shouldn't pull back that deep. So if we already pull back that deep, it's already a warning sign. But we get confirmation upon losing it. If we're really bullish here, then this should really accelerate to the upside. And there's a few different, how do you say it? There's a few different implications if we fail to break out here. It's I talked more about this in my YouTube video again, which will be shared in the next 24 hours. But the key is that if we fail here, it's a pretty bad sign if we fail here, because that brings again the range lows into play. But it also means that this breakout isn't a true breakout, and that this move to the upside isn't impulsive in that sense, which means that this may not be a completed 5-wave impulse. And again, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for completed trending moves. And thus far, we have 1, 2, 3. This triangle as a fourth is very clean. But if we can't get another impulsive move to complete this structure, then all we have here ends up being a corrective move to the upside. And while we would likely see 85K at that point, it's also possible we come back down to the green zone here in the low 70s. Now, the other thing, and again, I've gone into more depth in this in my YouTube video, but the point here that I want to make is that irrespective of what Bitcoin does here, it's really not that concerning. If we just go up from here, it means alts are going to outperform regardless, right? If Bitcoin goes up from here and ends up going to 200K with no pullbacks, great, that's a 2x. In that case, alts are going to do 5, 10, 20, 30, 50x, right? And so if Bitcoin just simply goes up, that's great, but it doesn't really mean that we should be FOMOing here. On the other hand, if Bitcoin doesn't go straight up and it does break down, and then we do see a move back down to 85K or potentially 70K even, that is where things get interesting, right? So my approach to this, as I'm not currently in a Bitcoin position, so my approach is if Bitcoin goes up, great, I'm going to make a ton of money on alts regardless. If Bitcoin doesn't go up and breaks down, we have a fantastic buy the dip opportunity in this low 70K region. This low 70K region, this is a line in the sand on the higher time frames, the same way that this little green box is the line in the sand on the lower time frames. So if we get down to 70K, that is the best risk to reward ratio for a long or a trade setup to run Bitcoin up to 150K plus. Like, I think we're headed to 150K plus irrespective. I just don't know if this is the start of that move. But if it is, then any retests of this region here are the best risk to reward longs you can get on Bitcoin at this moment in time. And if this region is lost, things get a little bit ugly. But that's a story for another day if we end up breaking down here.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then on the basis that you were just saying there, if we start to pull back, for example, let's say we get the bearish scenario, would you think that alts would run in that scenario, like, and start to see the rotation from Bitcoin into alts while Bitcoin bled out? Or do you think that that's a whole market? It's obviously like a hard question to answer, a whole market bleed out.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I honestly think it's going to be very, different depending on which alt we're looking at. So there's some alts that are in positions where if we get, like, this is the ideal scenario for the alts that look bullish right now. Let's say a Bitcoin rejection here, right? Because when Bitcoin tends to just erupt and just go straight up, it tends to suck liquidity out of everything, right? So in the most bullish scenario where Bitcoin just keeps going up to 150K plus from where we are now, doesn't lose this little green box and just keeps going up. In that scenario, if we see a very aggressive move to the upside, there's a chance that it's going to suck liquidity out of the entire alt market, right? So the best case scenario for alts is actually kind of the lower time frame bearish scenario where Bitcoin actually rejects here shortly and then ends up ranging again, falls back inside this range, moves to the bottom. Initially on this drop to the downside, we may see a pullback across the board on alts. But what would be the ideal scenario for alts is a situation where we pull back, kind of chop around here, hit the green zone, bounce up, and essentially get stuck in what is like a much larger consolidation structure that is between our highs that we've now put in and this massive support at 70K. If we can sandwich ourselves in between there for some weeks, then the alts that currently look prime to continue higher will probably absolutely explode. I'm talking about XRP, CRV, the ones that we've covered. If we can do this. At the same time, there's some alts that are potentially putting in topping structures. These are alts that have already been running for 6 to 12 months. In this sort of environment, they may bleed. So essentially, we may continue to see that rotation that we've seen over the last month or so into utility coins, with coins like CRV, HBAR, XRP going 400 to 500% in a month. Those will benefit. And I think that the money that will go to them is going to come from the other coins that have already done 10, 20, 30x over the last 6 months. And people are now going to start taking profits and going into what's hot while Bitcoin essentially goes sideways. So this is the ideal scenario for alts. And I'm hoping we get this because it's going to be kind of like a mini alt season if this can work out this way.
Yeah, almost like in my head, a way that we could mimic the 2017 cycle a little bit, where the alts had like a bit of a semi-alt season first, and then consolidation into a secondary alt season like later on in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I maintain that the biggest alt season, kind of the final massive alt season, will happen once Bitcoin tops for the cycle, which I've said will be over 150K in my opinion. So this is like this should be a good alt season. I don't think it's going to be the biggest alt season, but it should be a pretty good one based on everything that we're seeing.
Yeah, awesome. And then just touching back onto Bitcoin, as you were saying, that Bitcoin could suck in liquidity if it starts to go on like a real push towards the upside. It's kind of like this morning's already displaying that in a little sense, because I think Bitcoin dominance moved up maybe like 2% even just on this this move up here, because I've been tracking Bitcoin dominance in like an ascending parallel channel that actually broke down and closed below for the first few days, and then recently today it's actually, I think, poking itself back in. So
yeah, so we can take a look at Bitcoin dominance actually next, and this is actually really good thing to take a look at, because I wanted to talk about this. There was a situation in which we were in the last cycle, and this is actually, let me pull up the Bitcoin chart as well here to kind of compare and contrast. But basically, in the last cycle, we had a scenario in which before Bitcoin had actually topped, we saw kind of like a mini alt season. And so we saw dominance drop. And then as Bitcoin kind of went up for that final parabolic blow off top leg to, I think it was like 20K or whatever it was, we then saw a resurgence in Bitcoin dominance, another spike to actually put in our top. And I want to say that was this region here, this initial bleed. I want to say it was here, or it might have been something like this. Let me see if I can find it here on the chart. Okay, so this is the Bitcoin chart, and let's see if we can identify that. So, okay, right here, this is 2017. I'll mark it off here. And so you can see here that we had this bleed in dominance from 90% down to 51%. Then we saw a rise in dominance from 51% to 70%. And that bleed and subsequent rise, we essentially bled right here on the Bitcoin chart. And then as Bitcoin went for that final blow off top up to 20K, we saw Bitcoin dominance spike one more time. And then we saw the big plummet from 70% dominance down to 35% dominance. And that took place literally in like the 2 or 3 weeks, or I think it's like a couple of months after Bitcoin's top here. So I think we're probably seeing something similar, where we're seeing an initial drop in Bitcoin dominance as Bitcoin kind of consolidates above 100K. But when we get that final parabolic move to 150K plus, I think wherever Bitcoin dominance is at that point. We're going to see another spike to the upside, which may or may not make another subsequent high. And then that after Bitcoin tops, we see that massive bleed down to what I think will be sub 35%. And that will be the massive major alt season that I think we should be expecting.
Okay, so you align with me in like two different thoughts. It's like one, I've not been sure whether we could and how we could reach the 70% dominance for Bitcoin, because I just thought that the dominance, like although it was grinding up, it felt like it needed to have a bit of a pullback. And the other secondary thing that I think is interesting is I have a thesis that like over time, which is obviously quite an obvious thesis, I think, as more coins come into the market and they become more relevant, that we will lose the 35% floor that we've seen for Bitcoin dominance as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my opinion, Bitcoin dominance is essentially, over a long enough period of time going to bleed itself out because, like you said, when Bitcoin was created, it was the only one. Then XRP was made, then Ethereum was made, and now we have tens of thousands of altcoins. And yeah, a lot of them are going to die off along the way, but the reality is that there's enough space in the crypto space for more than one coin. Like it's not one coin is going to rule them all. There's going to be maybe not tens of thousands, but maybe hundreds of coins long term, in my opinion. And so as those coins ultimately, break down in the next bear market and then rise from the ashes, we're going to see money kind of start to flow into the entire space, and that concentration of Bitcoin dominance, I think over time is simply just going to get reduced because this space is like the internet, and it's like eBay used to be dominant or MySpace used to be dominant, and then came Facebook, and then came Amazon, and there's going to be new entrants to the space. I'm not necessarily saying that Bitcoin will be replaced by anything. I'm simply saying that there's more space. There's space enough for more than one winner here. So yeah, I do think long term we're going to bleed out, and I think by the end of this cycle we should at least at the bare minimum see sub 35%. And that's also a good way to gauge when we may be seeing the end towards the end of the alt season. When Bitcoin dominance is then below 35%, okay, it's time to think that, okay, we might be getting close to the end of this alt season, the end of the cycle. And I'm sure people are going to be euphoric when dominance is that low because it means that alts are going to be popping off left and right. But it's at that point in time that you want to probably start being a little bit more cautious and locking in gains.
So what you're basically telling me is hold my XRP until 35% Bitcoin dominance and dump it all.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Thank you very much for that. And so actually just moving on to XRP, if that's okay, would you be able to provide us a bit of TA on XRP? Because we both spoke about just before we came on that XRP was one of your bigger bags as well. And I know a lot of the people in the XRP community love the TA that you've been doing for XRP. You gave us some thoughts before most people in the markets about what you thought was going to happen.
Yeah, sure. So we'll take a look at XRP here, and it's honestly, out of all the major coins here, the structure here is super, super clean, which tells me that there's real momentum behind this move, and because of the clean structure, it gives us a lot of trade opportunities. So it's easier to open and enter trades on a trending asset like this because you have clear validation levels as price moves up. Whereas when a coin is not moving up with clean momentum-based like structural impulses, as we like to call them, it's often hard to identify invalidation points because we have more chop, we have more overlapping, we have more fake outs to the upside and the downside, and that means stops getting run left and right. So this is the ideal way that I would like to see a chart move up. And right now, XRP is probably one of the only altcoins I'm seeing that has such clean structure. Like even CRV is up from 26 cents. We've gotten a long in 26 cents and it's up to $1 and some change. But even CRV structure isn't this clean. Like CRV structure, even though we're moving up quite like choppily. There's not as much momentum behind the move up. And I understand that because the way that I'm viewing CRV is that it's still in this giant macro range. We'll cover that maybe a little bit later, but XRP specifically is really just trending. It's trending and it's trending hard in a clear, impulsive manner. This is what we like to see for sustained moves to the upside. And this is also what gives me confidence that people are really, really underestimating XRP right now. I mean, you can look at the XRP BTC chart and you can look at the XRP Ethereum chart, and that'll kind of give you an idea of how bullish we should be on XRP. But looking at the UC chart and just seeing how clean the structure is tells me that people are really, really not understanding what's happening here and the magnitude and the seriousness of this move to the upside. I mean, we have, as you can see here, very clean trending 5-wave moves to the upside. Even here on the lower time frames, this structure here looks like a very clean, I'm just going to change the color, a very clean 5-wave trending move. And so originally when we were trading at around $1.13, we had this little low time frame impulse, and I said, well, if we're going to extend here, then we shouldn't go below $1.10. So there's your first invalidation. That means that you could have taken a long at $1.20, $1.30, stop loss at $1.10, targeting much higher, and you would have been perfectly fine. And that's why I like these sort of impulsive trending moves. We have another 5-wave impulse now off of 129. So again, I can say, well, if we're as bullish as I think we probably won't see sub 129 again. So if we, as the closer that we get to 129, the more, the better you have, the better trade opportunity you have in terms of risk to reward. And of course, like again, like the closer we get to this local validation, the better the opportunity is. So you have very clear, distinct ways to manage risk on a move like this, which is why I love it. But if we're right here, then essentially what we have going on is off of these lows, a completed first 5-wave move up to here. This was a very short and abrupt second, and we're working on a major third in what is going to be a much larger 5-wave move to the upside, which should take us to new all-time highs. So something that looks like this structurally. And again, this is not drawn in scale of price or time. It's just to show you the structure. So if we are doing what I think we're doing, then what we have here is a completed first wave, a second wave, and then we're working on the third. And within that third, we've just potentially completed the first wave of 5. So if this first subwave of this larger third went from $1.30 to 253, that's $1.20 move. And that should be the smallest wave of this larger 3-wave move. So we're looking at another $3 to $4 to the upside at the minimum just to complete the third wave. Then we have the fourth wave. Then we have the fifth wave. So not expecting anything major in terms of pullbacks on XRP. Again, if this is accurate, then we won't see below 130 from current levels. Now, granted, that is a 50% drop from current levels, but that's kind of the level at which if we go below, okay, things might be looking a little bit shaky, but we can go 20, 30% down from here and be fine. This is where things start getting a little shaky. Until then, any dip is for buying, and any dip is probably going to be short-lived. So we'll get further confirmation of this after this corrective chop completes and we see another low time frame impulse. And once that happens, we can then tighten up the invalidation to the next low time frame impulse and then ride that up really to new all-time highs. And so, yeah, XRP looks fantastic. This is just the USD chart, but the BTC pairings and the Ethereum pairings look spectacular as well.
Yeah, and I would like you to touch on the BTC, and if you have time, but I just want to say for everyone listening, it's like when you do get into these periods, although like the percentages might not seem like a lot when we talk about them here, 50% is still an emotional like journey for people. So just like relax and take it easy as we start to get like more volatile, especially if you're looking at your portfolio, your price is going to start to fluctuate like massively because if you got in like pretty low. So it's just like a bit of a mental note there that I want to pass on to people from experience. So either have your take profit target completely nailed, or if you're starting to get a bit emotional about like your capital, just start to take a bit off the table because you'll trade yourself out of the market if you're not careful.
Yeah, and on that note, I would like to add as well that if you are not a trader and you're just a spot holder, then all that low time frame stuff that I just explained probably isn't worth paying too much attention to unless you're trying to learn how to trade. Because, like you said, you don't want to get caught up in the lower time frame stuff and miss the big move. On the higher time frames, I mean, this is the start of essentially XRP's first bull run since 2017, really. So on the high time frames as a spot holder, and if you're not actively trading, don't get lost and miss the forest for the trees by getting too caught up with the lower time frame movements. I pay attention to that because I'm actively trading, but for someone who's not, you just got to hold and chill pretty much for the next 6 months, and you should come out significantly wealthier at the end of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure in your comments you get a lot of people saying, "Oh, okay, like it needs to correct a bit. Shall I sell here and buy back lower?" Like if you're not a trader, just don't like Cred and I align with this. It's just like don't worry about it. Just sit and look for the larger time frame moves that we're potentially looking for, like over those longer periods, as Cred just explained.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, so again, for the traders here, this is the XRP BTC chart, and I talked about this, I believe, in my last YouTube video. So what we're looking at here essentially is a massive range, and we saw a deviation below the range lows. We then made a higher low right here, and so now we target the range highs. So just to put this into perspective, when I say that XRP is really bullish and people are underestimating it, just to give you an idea, a move from where we are now up to the range highs is almost a 900% move. So that's a 900% gain against Bitcoin. For some context, at 0.002, which is where that level is, if Bitcoin's trading at $100,000 when we hit the range highs here, that puts XRP at 20 bucks. And so that's assuming Bitcoin's only at 100K. So if we hit that level when Bitcoin's at 150 or 175 or even 200, then we're going to be a lot higher than $20 XRP when we get to that point. So what we're seeing here is essentially a massive range that we have deviated below, that we've consolidated within, that has now been reclaimed. And we're looking for a move up, over time to these highs. And so you don't want to sell yourself short at $2 when we're looking at $20 plus XRP down the road. A key level within this range, there's two key levels. So the first key level is one that we're kind of testing now. And it's very simply, if we go to the monthly time frame, or actually it goes like the 3-month time frame. Yeah, here you go. So very, very simply, I'm going to hide this stuff real quick, the lower time frame stuff. If we go to this 3-month chart and we look at where did we break down from? Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Where did we break down from to put in our last low? What was the move that preceded it? It was this candle right here before we got this breakdown, right? That breakdown failed to take our lows, which is a good sign. It means that this candle is likely to get run through essentially. These candles are more significant when they break structure. If they proceed a move that doesn't break structure, it indicates that on a retest, we probably run through. But let's just say we don't, right? Let's say we reject here on the BTC pairing. If we do that, and again, this is a 3-month chart, so it's going to be, you can't really wait for confirmation because you can't wait. Well, actually, it's 26 days away, so maybe you can wait. But if we get a close in 26 days above the candle body, that's a great sign. If we get a close above the candle wick, then pretty much send it to the range highs. But this is kind of the main area of resistance. Once we clear this, it's pretty much clear skies. There's this level here that I've marked off in red. And I've marked that off because we've had some very, very clean interactions with it in the past. You can see here it acted as support, then resistance, resistance, resistance. And so this is the next key level once we clear this area of resistance. And when we flip this red level, we might do something like this. No guarantees because XRP looks so freaking bullish right now. But maybe we come up here, maybe we retest this monthly level and then go up like that. Maybe it's not a straight shot. Maybe it's something like this where we get some chop here, or maybe we just go for a straight shot to the upside. Either way, by the time we get to this level here, for context, again, if Bitcoin's at $100,000 when we hit this dotted red line, that puts XRP at $4, right? And then just to give you guys an idea that we're not very far away from that. We've gone up significantly over the last few days. So we're close to this area. Once we flip this, then we're targeting new highs. And again, it's a fantastic looking chart, whether you look at it on the USD pairing or the Bitcoin pairing. And honestly, what's even more clear than this Bitcoin pairing is the Ethereum pairing. And that chart looks, it's the best looking chart I've seen in a long time. So you have any questions on the Bitcoin chart? And then we'll take a look at the Ethereum one.
The only one that I think I'd have is a bit of not a moon boy question, because I cover a lot of this as well, and it's great to see you identify pretty much the same sort of stuff as me. It's I actually look at it inverted to show people that it just looks like it's going to puke, and when it has in the past, it's just absolutely puke. Like 2017, it's just literally a straight line, like you said. But the only question that I would have is there any possibility of it setting a higher high against that previous range from 2017? Do you think that's possible or not?
So I'm targeting these range highs at the minimum, and then how high above that it goes, that is something that we will all have to wait and see. Because once we get above here, you're technically at that point in price discovery, right? So we know that on USD pairings, people say this a lot, that the best time to make money is in price discovery, because at that point there's no sellers left, at these levels to hold price down. But again, it can be two things. We could rip through these highs and just keep chugging along. And I have not even thought about what that could mean for the USD price, because again, we're talking about $20 if we're at 100K Bitcoin when we hit here. So if we climb higher than that, at this level here, we're at $30. Over here, we're at $40. And this is log scale. So these small moves look small, but they're quite significant. So you have to keep that in mind. But yeah, it's fair game above those highs. But I think that targeting those highs is a good place to start locking in profits, because just like we saw the last times we went for the highs or we got close to them, we've rejected. So it's also very possible that we wick these highs and then come for a much larger correction. And maybe that's the end of the run, or maybe we come down for a correction to the mid range and then go up again. So there's a lot of things that can happen at these highs, and we'll only know as price develops, looking at all three of our charts to understand if we're probably going to top out here or if we're just going to rip through. But yeah, it's technically absolutely possible that we just break through here and keep chugging along. We can't really rule that out.
Yeah, because in my analysis, I've never, only just looking at this chart here, like when I'm sitting looking at what you're talking about, it's like I've never considered the fact that we actually could go higher than that, because in my head of how much market dominance XRP would probably have to have, and what price it would have to be, it almost seems illogical, and maybe it's an emotional or psychological barrier for me. So actually seeing you present this has made me think, oh, actually, I'm always going to target that, by the way, for everyone watching. Is like, I'm targeting some sells on the way, and that's going to be like where I'm probably going to have my last sell order. I'll still hold some XRP at that point, but I'll have my last sell order in it around those sort of prices. But sitting here is the first time that I've actually thought, well, that's not like a definite ceiling. That's based, so that's why I just bounced that question, because it just came. It's the first time it's ever come into my head. I don't know whether that's stupid or not, because we've never seen it go higher, and I almost presume that it's not possible. But obviously anything's possible technically. But that's why I just wanted to ask
Yeah.
you that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And if you just think about it, essentially, because, whether or not, I mean, I think we all think that the SEC case definitely played a role in suppressing XRP price over the years, but that has essentially led to this massive buildup, of a 7-year consolidation that we're now breaking out of. So if you think about that, Bitcoin itself has never had a 7-year consolidation. Like, this is unheard of in the space. It hasn't happened before. And so the resulting expansion from a 7-year consolidation period is going to be something probably the likes of which we've never seen before. And so when we talk about, can it go back above prior, all-time highs on the Bitcoin pairing, with the circumstances and the market context that we're in, I think, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's I mean, I've been saying $20 to $30 XRP for literally since, like, I don't know, 2019, 2018, 2020. I've been saying $20 to $30 XRP. And people always say, well, back then said I was crazy. And many people said, once we had the SEC lawsuit, that XRP would never see $1 again. And here we are today at $2 and some change, within a month off the lows. And this is always how I've said 20 to 30. I was always just taking 100K Bitcoin, which I was so confident in even 4 or 5 years ago. And I said, if we're going to hit 100K Bitcoin and the XRP Bitcoin is going to see all new all-time highs, which is quite likely in my opinion, that gives us $20 Bitcoin. So it's always a very straightforward, logical, approach. But people don't see things that way, or they can't envision these things. Well, of course, a lot of people don't know how to read a chart, but they can't envision these things when you just say $20 XRP. Like, where does that come from, right? But it's always been just this. And then I also kind of compare it to people who look at Ethereum, and Ethereum has hit $5,000, and people say there's no way that XRP hits $10, much less $20. And then I ask them, well, do you think Ethereum can hit 10K? And they're like, yeah, that's easy. We hit 5K already. I'm like, did you check what the market cap would be at 10K Ethereum and compare that to XRP? And the answer is no. And the reality is that a $10,000 Ethereum at that market cap is equivalent to a $22 XRP, if my math was right from the last time I checked. So it's not unreasonable. And we already know that XRP flipped Ethereum in 2017 for a period of time. So when you combine all these things together, it's really not that crazy. It's actually very logical and realistic. But most people won't see it coming because they're so closed off to the idea, because they haven't looked at the numbers or the data or any of that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great summarization. Summary, I guess.
Yeah.
So can we go to XRP ETH now, please? Thank you.
Yeah. And
Absolute mastermind on XRP Masterclass here, guys. That's what I'm looking for as well.
yeah, so I was actually going to make a YouTube video on XRP after the one I'm going to release tomorrow, but I think this pretty much covers everything. So I'll probably just direct them to this, because this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So here's XRP Ethereum, and I shared this chart back when we were about 45% lower. This was maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. And basically, the structure here is incredibly clean. Once again, we have a range established here that we consolidated the lows for a long period of time. We then deviated below the lows. We reclaimed it, retested it, and have now shot up. and we're targeting the range highs. So again, you take a $4,000 Ethereum. I think we're at 3,700, 3,600 right now. At a $4,000 Ethereum, when we hit this level, the range highs, which is just our first target, that gives us an XRP price of 4,000 times 0.001275. That gives us an XRP price. I did something wrong. 4,000 times 0.001275, an XRP price of $5.10. So at that point, we're already at new all-time highs. But where it gets really exciting is when we hit the second target. And again, that's new highs against Ethereum. And again, I think this is just as reasonable, if not more reasonable, than new highs against Bitcoin, because again, Ethereum has been running for a while now. It hit 5,000 plus, while XRP stayed dormant and consolidated. So XRP has some catching up to do. So by the time we hit this upper target, let's just again take $4,000 Ethereum. Once again, if we hit that level when Ethereum's at $4,000, then that gives us an XRP price of $20. Again, we're seeing confluence with the XRP Bitcoin chart and the XRP Ethereum chart. And again, this is assuming that Ethereum's at $4,000. Ethereum, I think, is headed to 10K plus. So if Ethereum's at 8,000 when we get here, technically that means that we'd be at $40 XRP. So again, this $20 to $30 range that I mentioned, I think is very realistic. And I think we're going to get there a lot sooner than most are expecting. We know, I mean, if you've been here since 2017. When XRP takes off and it gets going, it steals the freaking show. Like, it just goes. We've seen those. It's rare when it happens because we've been consolidating for 7 years. But when the ball gets rolling on XRP, there's nothing that can compare to it. And of course, we know the SEC case is pretty much over. Ripple has pretty much won that. We have a pro crypto administration that's going to be taking over soon. Everything is lining up, and then Ripple's probably going to go public now. They've been waiting for this SEC case to complete, and now we have a administration that's supportive. So I have no doubt in my mind that we'll probably see a Ripple IPO soon, and all this is going to do is bring attention to what? To XRP. So it's exciting. I mean, it's going to be big, and I think most are going to be blindsided. Hopefully, people that are watching this are not going to be.
Yeah, I hope that, because as you have, I've been talking about XRP for, well, it's been one of the main elements of my channel since into the last bull, because I was heavy ETH going into the 2020 2021 cycle, and basically rotated it all over that cycle into XRP, presuming there would be XRP moving like later in the cycle. It never happened, so I had a big bag, and then spent a lot of time like in the trenches with the XRP community, and just kept adding to that bag throughout the bear market, on the thought process that we would break the range. And then as we started to break the range, it's now seeming to be a good play. But spent probably 4 years of being told how stupid I was, even by peers in the crypto space, not just by outsiders. So it's a bit crazy how fast these things happen. And I remember it happening in 2017, which is the main thing that filled me with confidence that history often repeats. And I was just waiting for the confirmation of a range break. Until then, it might not repeat, but when you start to get that range break that we're getting now, it's more of like, it's game on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've dealt with the same thing over the last 7 years. The amount of negativity and hate towards XRP, or anyone that tends to talk about it, is crazy. And it is strange. Like you said, our peers are the ones that have been oftentimes the ones who have been talking down on us. I've been blocked by large accounts simply for talking about XRP. I've been mocked, of course, and I'm sure you get a lot of it as well, because people. I mean, if I were to talk to any chart analyst, someone who actively trades for a living, and were to show them these charts, the logic is pretty solid and undeniable, right? Like, it's pretty straightforward. It's not some crazy stuff. Like, these methods of analysis are used by a lot of chartists, whether you're a price action trader, an alley wave trader, or something else. It's a very straightforward approach when it comes to these charts. But it's, for some reason, despite that, irrespective of that, there's so much misinformation and misunderstanding around the token, and it just gets this kind of like unwarranted, like ignorant hate, regardless, right? Like, the ideas of $20 XRP are mocked constantly. Anything more than $5-6 XRP was probably mocked constantly until recently, and people have seen this rally. So yeah, it has been a long journey, and it's been a intense one, and I think finally I think it's going to pay off, and we'll be proven right in the end. So
Yeah, and the hard part I think is like the emotional aspect of it, because many people just blindly hate XRP, and I'm not genuinely sure why, because when you get down to the crux of it, there isn't often a reason. But then the XRP community get labeled as like a cool, and in some senses, like, and in some aspects that some people are. But me, for example, like you can clearly see, like I've got an ape, like I'm into ETH. I'm happy for all different cryptos to go up if I like the asset. But people just, for some reason, just dislike and disregard and say it's impossible for XRP to make these moves, when clearly and technically and statistically it's very possible. So that's where I guess there's value though. That was one thing that always filled me with confidence. And I'll tell you a quick story. And when I was at the Creator Campus a few weeks ago, I spoke to some people who were quite heavy in the ETH and Sol like spaces when XRP was at like 55 cent, and they said, "Oh, like, what am I looking at?" I was like, "Guys, I think XRP's time is very soon, and like, I'm mainly XRP." And they both like laughed and like dapped each other up. And in my head, I was like, "Oh, this is the signal. Like, we're closer than I thought. We're closer than I thought I was for the move, because people have like everyone's written it off now, and so they've given up. And then that's normally when the catalyst comes for some reason."
yeah, I mean, you've nailed it. And I mean, just the amount of big accounts in the last few weeks that are so eager to call a top on XRP with this initial rally. I mean, I've seen countless large accounts basically saying the time to short, or XRP is going to fizzle out again like it always does. I mean, their disbelief is in the air. And yeah, I mean, I think it's all going to be very clear very soon, because I think we're reaching a point where we're just going to accelerate to the upside, even more aggressive than we have been. So yeah, I don't think we'll have to debate people much longer. I think it's going to be very clear very soon.
Yeah, I agree. And is there any more charts like CRV? Did you want to just touch on that before we wrap up, Cred? I'd like
Yeah,
to
sure.
give.
So we'll
I know
take a
you
quick
cover
look at.
CVX and CRV quite heavily, and I'm interested to see what you think on either or both of those.
Yeah, so I've covered this CRV extensively in my YouTube video that will be uploaded tomorrow. So I won't go into too much depth. But what I will say is, just to give you an example of what I meant by like the move up being a little more grindy and not as impulsive, just to show you guys, your audience, what I mean. Like, you can look at this move off the lows, and you can just see, like, you have this kind of choppy overlapping, like choppy price action. Whereas, and you look at something like XRP, and you have like very clear five-wave subdivisions on these moves. Like, it's a world of a difference. One, two, three, four, five. A world of a difference in terms of the price action that we're seeing here. And again, in my opinion, that is a testament to the fact that XRP is moving up in a very impulsive, trending manner. And the reason that I think CRV is moving up the way that it is, kind of choppily, is because the way I'm viewing CRV is again that I'm viewing it essentially in a large macro range. So we can go ahead and view it this way. Or actually, I have another chart on it that's a little bit more clean. Here you go. So you can view this on CRV as a a large consolidation structure, or a large range that we now deviated below and are now moving to the upside of. Now, this means two things. One is that the move to the upside may not be aggressive, something like XRP that's actively trending, right, in impulsive manner, because we're still technically in a range bound environment here. But the very bullish thing, what this does mean is that if this move up is just essentially a deviation of the range and a kind of a return to the mean, or a move back to the range highs to seek liquidity, when the true impulsive movements do start on CRV, right? When we do start getting those clear five-wave subdivisions that we're already seeing on XRP, the move will be very violent. It'll be a lot more aggressive than what we've already seen. And that's what gets me excited, is that this move that we've seen so far, as great as it was, really isn't really like a super strong momentum trending move. Like, that is yet to be seen. And so that gets me really excited on something like CRV, where we're kind of grinding up. Oh, there's an alert on Doge. We're kind of grinding up. And just for more context, you can see here the weekly chart on CRV. The weekly RSI has now entered overbought territory for the first time in its existence. And what have we seen? We've seen a 4x off the low. So that kind of adds what we were talking about earlier. When RSI becomes overbought in higher timeframes, we tend to see the largest moves. CRV RSI on the 3 weekly has not yet, but is about to enter overbought territory for the first time. And CRV RSI on the monthly still has a lot of room to even get to overbought territory. So there's a lot left in this rally. It is really just getting started on CRV. And like XRP is at $2.30 right now. The old high was 350. We're about 66% of the old highs. CRV, the old high was $7, and we're at $1 right now. So we're not even 20% to the old highs. So this move is really just getting started, which is why I'm so excited about it. We could correct from here, as I've talked about in my new video. We could see a pullback here because we're technically at this zone here, which is monthly supply, which is similar to the other resistances I've talked about, where this is an area of contention where we may see sellers step in. So it's possible that we pull back. If we close this monthly candle in 26 days above the body, again, that's a great sign. If we close it above the wick, that's an even better sign. If we close it inside or below, it means that we could come back maybe to the range lows, 30, 40, 50 cents, chop around, and then get that really strong impulsive trending move. So we have some work to do here, but it's off to a fantastic start. And this just means that if you're not on board yet, it is certainly not too late to get in on something like CRV.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And to be honest, mate, I don't want to take too much of your time, and you keep giving me all your alpha, and you haven't even dropped your YouTube yet, so I'm gonna cut you off there because I know you're eager to share on it, and I'm really thankful for it. And to be honest, in this video, you've confirmed a lot of thoughts that I had, and also made me, given me the opportunity to sit and look and listen and to your TA on the charts that I look at a lot. So really appreciate you stopping in. Is there anything you want to touch on before we leave? And also, where can everybody find you if they want to follow some more of your work?
So yeah, I think that's about it. Not much else I want to touch on. You can follow me on YouTube and on Twitter. On Twitter at CredibleCrypto, and on YouTube at CredibleCrypto. And look out for my new video. It should be launching tomorrow on YouTube. And I go into a little bit more depth on CRV, CVX, a few other alts like Link and WIF and some others. So yeah, you can find me on those socials. And if you do enjoy my content, of course, please like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Credit. It's been a long time coming, and that rounds up our fifth insightful session with Crypto Insight UK and today, Credible Crypto. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.